Ferrari just found something in the rulebook that could take away Mercedes' biggest advantage overnight. Because after being destroyed in Australia and China, Ferrari did not just try to go faster. They went deeper into the regulations. And what they uncovered forced the FIA to step in immediately. A hidden flaw in how engines were being measured. A loophole that allowed more performance exactly where it matters most. Even the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile admitted that engines could exceed limits under real conditions. And now, just days before the Japanese Grand Prix, that loophole is being closed. Which means one thing. Mercedes is about to be tested for the first time this season, without the advantage everyone is talking about. So the real question is not if Ferrari found something. The real question is, did they just expose the one weakness that changes everything? Subscribe now, because what happens in Japan could flip the entire championship. At first, Ferrari did not react like a team that was lost. They reacted like a team that knew something was off. Because after Australia, the gap was too big to ignore. And after China, it became impossible to explain. They were not being beaten in the corners. They were not being outdriven. In fact, in the more technical sections of the track, Ferrari was right there. Sometimes even faster. But then came the straights. And everything disappeared. Not gradually. Instantly. And that is what caught their attention. Because when you lose all your time in one phase of the lap, it tells you exactly where to look. Energy. Not just power. Not just aerodynamics. Energy deployment. Energy recovery. Energy efficiency. And in 2026, that is the entire game. But here is where Ferrari did something different. Instead of trying to copy Mercedes, they tried to understand why Mercedes could do what they were doing. Why their performance did not match the numbers. Why they were not the fastest in speed traps, but still pulled away. And that question led them somewhere unexpected. Not to the car. To the rules. Because when performance does not make sense, the explanation is usually hidden in the interpretation. And this is where Ferrari started digging deeper. Looking at how limits were defined. How they were measured. How they were enforced. And that is when they found it. A detail that most people ignored. A difference between what the rule said and how it was actually tested. Because on paper, everything looked controlled. Everything looked equal. But in reality, the conditions were not the same. And that is where the entire story begins to change. Because once Ferrari understood that gap, they realized something much bigger. Mercedes was not just ahead. They were operating in a space that others were not even measuring yet. And that is what made their advantage so difficult to see. So difficult to explain. And so difficult to catch. Until now. Because what Ferrari found was not hidden in performance. It was hidden in interpretation. A small detail, with massive consequences. The compression ratio rule. 16:1. A hard limit. Or at least, that is how it was supposed to work. But Ferrari realized something critical. That limit only existed under specific conditions. Cold conditions. Static testing. Not when the engine is actually running on track. And that changes everything. Because a Formula 1 engine does not operate in a controlled environment. It operates under extreme heat. Extreme pressure. Constant variation. Which means one thing. If the rule is only checked in cold conditions, then what happens when the engine is hot is not fully controlled. And that is the gap Ferrari identified. Because if you can design an engine that passes every official test, but behaves differently when it is at full temperature, you unlock extra performance. Not illegally, but outside the true intention of the rule. And this is where the situation becomes undeniable. Because even the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile confirmed it. There were ways to increase compression when the engine is running under real conditions. That single statement is everything. It confirms the loophole. It confirms the possibility. And it explains why Mercedes looked so different. Because this is not about top speed. It is about efficiency. More compression means better combustion. Better combustion means more usable energy. More usable energy means stronger deployment, exactly when others start losing it. And that is exactly what we have been seeing. Mercedes pulling away at the end of straights. Mercedes maintaining performance when others drop. Mercedes controlling races, without looking faster in a straight line. But here is where it becomes even more important. Because Ferrari did not just understand the problem. They acted on it. They pushed. Along with other manufacturers. Audi, Honda. All pointing at the same issue. This was not about innovation anymore. This was about fairness. Because if one team operates in a space the rules do not properly control, then the entire competitive balance is broken. And that is why the reaction was immediate. Not from teams. From the FIA. Because once that gap was exposed, there was only one option left. Close it. before it defines the entire season. And this is where everything changes, instantly. Because the moment the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile confirmed the gap, they acted. Not next season. Not later in the year. Now. The rule was updated to ensure that compression is no longer measured only in cold conditions, but also when the engine is running at real operating temperatures. Which means the gray area is gone. The flexibility is gone. The hidden advantage is effectively removed. And that is why this feels like a direct hit. Not because Mercedes broke the rules, but because they understood them better than anyone else. And now, that understanding has been neutralized. But here is where the story becomes even more intense. Because this does not reset the grid. Mercedes is still ahead. They already built their entire system around this concept. They already optimized their energy management, their deployment, their integration between engine and chassis. So even if the loophole disappears, the knowledge remains. And that is what makes Suzuka so important. Because now, for the first time this season, Mercedes has to operate without that hidden margin, without that extra efficiency, without that invisible advantage at the end of the straights. And Suzuka is the worst possible place for any weakness. High-speed commitment. Long, flowing corners. Constant energy demand. If there is even a small loss in efficiency, it will show immediately. Across the entire lap. But here is the real question. How much of Mercedes' dominance actually came from that rule? Because if it was the core of their performance, then everything changes now. The gap closes. Ferrari gets closer. The fight returns instantly. But if it was only one piece of a much bigger system, then something far more serious is happening. Because it would mean Mercedes is still ahead, even after losing the one thing everyone was chasing. And that is the moment where this story goes from controversy to confirmation. Because Suzuka will not just show who is faster. It will show why. It will show what was real, and what was only ever hidden inside the rules. And this is where the entire narrative reaches its breaking point. Because up until now, Ferrari exposed the rule. The FIA closed the gap. Mercedes lost the gray area. But none of that answers the most important question. What actually happens on track? Because Formula One does not care about theories. It does not care about intentions. It only cares about performance. And Suzuka is where performance gets exposed instantly. Because this is not a circuit where you can hide weaknesses. Not here. Not through those high-speed corners. Not through those long, flowing sections where the car is constantly under load. This is where efficiency is tested every second of the lap. And that is exactly what makes this moment so important. Because if Mercedes really depended on that extra compression advantage, we will see it. Not in a dramatic way. Not a complete collapse. Something more subtle, but far more revealing. A slight drop at the end of the straight. A little less pull when exiting corners. A small loss in energy deployment when it matters most. And in Formula One, that is everything. Because that is where lap time lives. But here is where the story becomes even more dangerous for Ferrari. Because what if nothing changes? What if Mercedes arrives in Suzuka and looks exactly the same? Still controlled. Still precise. Still managing energy better than anyone else. Because if that happens, then Ferrari did find the rule. They did expose the gap. But it was never the foundation. Only a detail. And that leads to a much bigger conclusion. Mercedes is not ahead because of one trick. They are ahead because they understand this era better than everyone else. Energy, integration, timing, execution, all working together. And that is something no rule change can remove. But if the opposite happens, if the gap closes, if Ferrari suddenly gets closer in the final sector, if Red Bull starts fighting again, then everything flips. Because it means that hidden advantage was real. It mattered. And without it, Mercedes becomes vulnerable. And that is the moment where the championship truly begins. Not in Australia. Not in China. In Japan. Because Suzuka is not just another race. It is the first real comparison. Before and after. With and without. And in that comparison, the truth becomes impossible to hide. So when the cars go flat out for the first time, when the drivers commit through those high-speed sections, when the stopwatch delivers its answer, we will finally see it. Not the narrative. Not the speculation. The reality. And the real question is no longer what Ferrari discovered. The real question is, did they just expose the key to beating Mercedes? Or did they just prove that Mercedes was never relying on it at all? And this is where everything finally gets decided. Because after all the theories, all the analysis, all the pressure from Ferrari, there is only one thing left. Reality. And in Formula One, reality is brutal. Because it does not care who found the rule. It does not care who was right. It only reveals who is actually faster, when everything is equal. And that is exactly what Suzuka is about to show. Because for the first time this season, Mercedes is exposed. No gray area. No hidden advantage. No unanswered questions. Just the car. The system. The performance. Pure. And that is what makes this moment so powerful. Because now, every single detail matters more than ever. Every braking point. Every deployment phase. Every fraction of energy used through those high-speed corners. Because if Mercedes truly built their dominance on that extra efficiency, then Suzuka will take it away. And when that happens, the entire grid will feel it. Ferrari will feel it. Closer on the straights. More competitive at the end of sectors. Finally able to fight instead of react. Red Bull will feel it. Opportunities opening. Gaps shrinking. A race that suddenly becomes unpredictable. But if none of that happens, if Mercedes still controls the pace, still manages energy better, still pulls away exactly where they used to, then the conclusion is unavoidable. This was never about a loophole. It was about mastery. A level of understanding that goes beyond the rulebook. Beyond a single concept. Something deeper. And that is what makes this moment so uncomfortable for everyone else. Because if Mercedes remains untouchable now, then catching them is not about closing a gap. It is about rethinking everything. But here is the final piece. Because what happens in Suzuka does not just answer one question. It defines the season. Because in that one race, we will see the true balance of power. The real gap. The real reason behind Mercedes' dominance. And once that is clear, everything changes. Development direction. Team confidence. Championship momentum. So when the lights go out in Japan, when the cars hit full speed for the first time, when the drivers commit with nothing left to hide, we are not just watching another Grand Prix. We are watching the moment where the illusion disappears, and the truth finally takes its place. And the truth will answer one thing. Did Ferrari just find the key to breaking Mercedes? Or did they just confirm that Mercedes was always ahead, no matter what?